Hello, everyone. This is Michelle Sullivan. I am so happy that you joined me today for this particular episode of Hurricane Helene 1 year later, the stories of loss, overcome, and overcoming. We survived a major weather event almost a year ago, September 27th of 2024. And those of us here in the mountains of Western North Carolina, we're here. We're still standing strong, but we have worked through some things. And I wanted this project to be about others sharing their stories. So today I have Kelly Hart with me today. Kelly, thank you so much for agreeing to share your story today.
Absolutely. Happy to do it. I have sort of parallel personal and professional stories to share. I'm the executive director at Literacy Connection in Hendersonville, and then also a foster parent. And so I sort of have both of those parallel
Yeah.
stories, telling
Yeah.
stories to share.
Well, so for our audience, tell us a little bit about the literacy program that you're a part of.
Sure. So, Literacy Connection is a nonprofit here in Henderson County serving adult learners. We connect adult learners with volunteer tutors to help them achieve economic and social success through literacy, mostly through English language acquisition. We also help prepare people for U.S. citizenship. So, we serve a lot of adults here in Henderson County and see amazing stories of resilience every day.
That's fantastic. And did I also heard you say that you are a foster parent as well? Is that correct?
So I had my final two foster children aged out of foster care in October and November of 2024. So
Oh,
right after the storm.
okay. Well, I'm sure we'll probably hear a little bit more about that as we continue on. So, if you would go back with me to the days leading up before everything happened, what do you remember about those days
Sure,
leading
yeah.
up?
My husband was planning on going to the beach with his uncle for the weekend, and we were, seeing a weather forecast, but just thinking, well, it's going to be pretty rainy one day. Shouldn't be a big deal. He's a teacher, so school got canceled um, on Thursday and Friday. And he was like, well, it's going to rain more on Friday than Thursday, so it'll be safer to drive to the beach on Thursday. So he drove to the beach on Thursday. And so left me at home with my two teenage foster daughters. And so Thursday afternoon, it became pretty evident that it was going to rain more than we anticipated. And one of my foster daughters had a boyfriend who lived on Dana Road. And so his yard floods when it rains too much. And so we said, hey, why don't you come over, spend the night in our spare room so that you have somewhere to park because we don't want your car to get destroyed. So I had my two teenage foster daughters, one of their boyfriends, and me at home, and my husband off to the beach with his uncle, you know, escaping. Who would have thought you'd escape the mountains to the beach to get away from a hurricane?
Right? Yeah.
So that was sort of the lead up. That was
Yeah.
the week of the storm before she hit.
So pretty much like with a lot of other people here, we were made aware that something was coming, but we've never experienced anything like this before, so there's really no way to know, right?
Exactly.
What is going to happen. So, um, when so tell me what happened next. So,
Sure.
yeah,
Well, so let me give you one more little tidbit from
sure.
before. So
Okay.
I inherited the Literacy Connection. I started July 22nd. We had a lovely little office in Patton Park. I had one staff person. I hired two more. They started on Monday, September 25th, 3rd, whatever day that was.
Yeah, so the
3
week
days
of the
before the
storm.
storm. Yeah.
Okay.
And when they started canceling school, we said, "Oh, Patton Park, sometimes the parking lot will flood, the field behind the building will flood." So we decided, okay, we're gonna close the office for Thursday and Friday, just sort
Okay.
of like everybody else was doing
Mm.
at the time. So then, so yeah, Friday morning, I woke up. It was pretty loud and rainy and windy, but it didn't seem all that bad. And then I called my husband who was at the beach, and he was like, "Well, you should make some coffee before the power goes out in case the power goes out." And I was like, "That's a really good idea." So I made some coffee, and then the power went out.
Mm.
Um, and so I just, deep cleaned my bedroom because what else was I going to do? There was no
Right.
power, couldn't go outside. It was still raining. And then once it stopped raining, I went outside and started walking around town like everybody does. I live close to downtown Hendersonville, so I was just out in the streets walking around. It felt a little bit like COVID when, everybody's out in the streets talking to their neighbors that they had never even talked to before, and
Right.
just seeing, these crazy sort of trees, the transformer off of the power line in the neighbor's yard. Um, just power lines down everywhere, and it was just kind of wild. So I walked down to Publix, where it floods down there in that
Right.
little stream, and the water is rushing over the bridge, and I'm just walking around taking pictures so that I can send them to my husband. I was talking to him, sort of telling him about it, and then the phone's cut out.
Hmm.
And so he's at the beach, I'm at home, no way to connect with him. But I was just really glad that he was able to know that I was okay after the
Yeah.
fact. I didn't realize that it was a big deal at the time, but
Yeah.
I was glad about that after the fact. So as I'm walking around talking to random neighbors, I told somebody, "Oh, wow, have you been down by Publix? Like, it's worse than I've ever seen it before." And he was like, "Oh, you think that's bad? Papa's and Beer is underwater." And I was like, "Well, if Papa's and Beer is underwater, then the literacy connection is underwater."
Oh,
Um,
no.
so, so I got in my car and I was like, let me go see how bad it is. And I drove down Asheville Highway, and you could get into the DHG parking lot. It's sort of built up above Patton Pool. You could get sort of halfway in, and I could see the water was across the road. I couldn't get any further, and I just looked across, and the water was like to the top of the front door. Um, and so I took a picture, which I was really glad I took a picture because it was like nobody will believe this if they don't see it. And there's no telling how high the water had been before that. But, you know, 2 months into my new role, my heart just sunk. And I
Yeah.
was just like, what do I even do? And of course, what I want to do is call my husband and cry on the phone, and I can't because the cell phone lines are down completely. And then we learned that, my foster daughter and her boyfriend had also been driving around because he was trying to get to his house to see how it was. It turns out his house was completely submerged, like over the roof. And we're
No.
hearing rescue stories of people on his street, having to get rescued by boats. So here we thought we were just saving his car, and we were actually saving his life. Um, so I had a house full of traumatized people, without my primary support person. Um, so, power's out, no cell phones. Saturday morning, woke up and the water was out. And so I said, well, we better go get some water. So I took my foster daughter with me. We went to Englis, that's, half a mile from our house. We spent 6 hours in line trying to buy a pack of water. Um, and there was this little guy, a couple people in front of us in line, talking on his phone. He was speaking Spanish. My foster daughter's from Guatemala, so she also speaks Spanish. And I was like, "Do you think he would let me use his phone?"
Oh,
Like, just to be able to call my husband and say, "Okay, here's all the things we need you to bring back from the beach." And so he did. And so I called him and I said, "I'm using a stranger's phone. I'm in Engels, but here's all the things we need. Bring water, bring ways to charge things, bring fuel for a stove, because of course my whole house is electric. I can't cook anything. Um, And so he and his uncle lives in Travelers Rest. They also are out of power. They ended up shopping for, they brought back 5 generators, I don't know how much water, gas cans, just, the whole 9 yards.
Right.
So it turned out to be really fortunate that he was not here. And then just hearing sort of what he was seeing as he drove in, having been totally separated from it, and then being one of the people on the outside, watching it on TV and being concerned about everyone here.
Yeah.
Um, so that was kind of a wild little reversal,
Yeah.
bringing things from the beach to save the people in the mountains.
Yeah. So I'm just looking at your face. This
Hmm.
brings up some emotions, doesn't it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. One of the reasons why I think it's really important for us to talk about our stories is it's a part of the healing process.
Mhm.
Were you scared? What were you where I mean, you had other people in the house and
Mhm.
it's you, the adult, what was going on in your mind at that time?
I mean, I think I didn't we didn't realize how bad things were for my foster daughter's boyfriend. So that it was really hard to manage sort of the dynamics and the like, we only have one fuel canister and they're making coffee 3 or 4 times a day. And I'm like, we need to save this fuel canister. So just like being able to see that this is going to be a long-term issue when I've got these young people who are
Yeah.
living in the moment. So having to navigate that was definitely a challenge.
Mm,
I don't know how much, I don't know that I had a whole lot of fear per se, um, just because like my house and everything were fortunately spared entirely. But I think just shock probably of like who knew this could ever happen, and
right.
wow, this is, and it was like I compare it to when I was in the hospital with malaria when I lived in Rwanda, and I
Okay.
had no idea how bad it was at the moment, but looking back it was like wow, I could have died. um
Yeah.
like when you're in the middle of it, it's sort of just survival mode, and then
Right.
looking back it's like wow, that could have been a whole lot worse.
Yeah.
And then I think just feeling for my foster daughters who were aging out of foster care in the aftermath of this natural disaster. Um, and like the housing crisis was already bad enough. Like, are they going to be able to find somewhere to live? Are they going to be able to be the independent adults that we've been working towards them being?
Yeah.
Um, which also sort of turned out to be a little bit of a um, fortunate situation just with all of the relief work that was going on right after the fact, that they actually were able to, acquire a lot of things they otherwise wouldn't have been able to.
Oh, wow.
And just like getting all of the food and the water and even like furniture and all the things that had been donated, it was like perfect timing for them as they're moving out of the house to have things that they
Wow.
would need.
I would have never even thought about that scenario.
Mhm.
Wow. Because we really did experience a real outpouring from people outside of the air. I think there were neighbors helping neighbors,
Mhm.
and people, we rose up, and what do you have? What do you need? I've got a chainsaw. Well, let's go cut this tree down so that you can get out of your driveway. It's beautiful how people can come together, and then outside people coming in being so incredibly generous
Yeah.
with
And
so many things.
And it was so the other big challenge right after the storm was like for Literacy Connection, I need to find all of my tutors and all of my students and see are they okay? Like what
Yeah.
do they need?
Yeah.
Um, and I'm just now getting to understand our program database and how does it work. I didn't have the luxury of having it all cleaned up and easy, click one button and email everybody. I was trying to
Yeah.
email all kinds of people. I got responses from a lot of tutors, some saying, "Oh, I'm not a tutor anymore," but their information wasn't up to date in the system. One who said, "Oh, I just got airlifted out of Batcave." and just hearing all these stories. And then I was trying to utilize my tutors to reach out to the students to say, are you okay? What do you need? Um, and so there ended up being a lot of really beautiful connections between tutors and students in meeting those needs. My favorite story that was I did a lot of crying, just that first week.
Yeah.
Um, but my first happy tears were was a few days after the storm, and I was perching up at hands-on using the Starlink on my computer, trying to find all my tutors. And I got an email from one of my tutors' husbands, actually, and he said, "I think you could probably use some good news right now. I have a great story for you." He said, "You probably know my wife, and she's been tutoring this student for 5 years. When he came to her, he couldn't even write his name. She helped him get through the U.S. citizenship process, and he's now helping her with another student to help on that same journey." He was like, "Well, I was taking a nap and I heard a little knock on the door, and it was my wife's student. And because she had texted him to say, 'Hey, are you okay?' And or he had texted her to ask if she was okay. And she said she was okay. They had some trees down across their driveway, but their house was okay. They were okay. She thought nothing more of it. But then her husband gets awoken from a nap and he's knocked on the door and he says, "Well, I've got a chainsaw. I can help with that." So he spent the whole day cutting down all the leyland cypresses that had fallen across their driveway. Um, the tutor
Wow.
sent me pictures. He said all we could give him was a little bit of gas for his truck and some tangerines, but it was just such a beautiful gift for him to give to his tutor. Um, and so it was just like such a strong connection that they had built that it reminded me that Literacy Connection is not just about tutors helping students in this one-way street, that it's such a strong relationship that gets built and that the students can help the tutors just as much.
Mm.
And we heard lots of other stories of, tutoring sessions couldn't happen in their normal places, so they met outside or they
Oh,
met at a distribution center so that somebody could practice asking for help with their tutor next to them to get the
wow.
things that they needed.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then it was, needs started popping up. Like somebody lost all their appliances because of the electricity surge. And so one of our students lost his refrigerator, and another tutor who doesn't even know him got him a refrigerator. And just all these connections, our IT guy's mother-in-law who's delivering clothes to our students who live in other parts of the community. I got to go shopping for a mom and her kids in partnership with Safelight. They let us go to their thrift store and find clothes for this mom because they lived up near Batcave and they had evacuated and their house was okay, but they couldn't get back to it. So
Yeah.
living in a hotel, she's working at Cookout. The only clothes she has are her one Cookout t-shirt and jeans.
Bless
So
her.
I went and met her at Cookout and gave her a few bags of clothes. Um, and she was just so grateful. But there was a lot of neighbors helping neighbors. There was a lot of, back and forth, tutors helping students, students helping tutors. So
Hmm.
it really was beautiful to see the connections that had been made prior and how strong they were in times of need.
I'm so glad that you're sharing that story because it's, I was just thinking with Literacy Connection, the tutors really are giving such an incredible gift to the students that they're working with. And I'm sure that they're grateful because it's opening up a world for them of reading and language that they needed some help with. But how beautiful for them to be able to give back and that it is a reciprocal relationship
Yeah.
that who would have I wouldn't even have thought about that scenario. But so how did your husband and his uncle, how was it for them, driving up from Florida into the mountains?
Yeah, they were in South Carolina, near Myrtle Beach, but I mean, he said it was pretty wild. We were checking maps, like, are you even going to be able to get here?
Yeah.
So he didn't come back till Sunday afternoon, and they had cleared all of the trees off of 26 was sort of one of the first things they had done. But he was just talking about how many trees were down and how wild it was that you could drive up one stretch of the road and see all this destruction, and then you keep driving and it looks like nothing's happened, and then you hit another spot where it's just like
Yeah.
wild destruction, which now we've all seen. I hadn't seen it at the time because we were kind of just stuck here, but um and they could get everything they needed down there. Meanwhile, I'm talking to friends. I had a friend who's so our year-round schools kids were on session break when the storm hit. And so her 8-year-old was at her parents or her in-laws' house in Tennessee, and they were supposed to pick him up on Saturday morning.
Mm,
And the formerly 2-hour drive to Tennessee, they tried to go. They couldn't get there because the interstate was washed out. And so they had to figure out an alternate route. And I think it took them something like 7 hours. They had to go like through Charlotte to get up and all the way around to go get to them. Um, so we fortunately had heard about what roads were closed and how could you get here. And so he was able to make it home. I think he experienced a pretty significant amount of relief when he finally was back with us,
yeah.
um, because he had been watching it on the news from afar, and we couldn't see it.
Right.
We
We
had
had
no
no
idea how
idea.
bad it was. Yeah,
Hmm.
other than the things we had seen with our own eyes. Um, and he's seeing, Chimney Rock wiped
Hmm.
off the face of the planet, and
Yeah.
the River Arch District underwater and all of this stuff that we just didn't even know about yet.
Yeah.
So I think we were really grateful that he was able to bring the supplies we needed, and just the relief to have my person back
Yes.
while I'm grieving the loss of this building that I had just acquired. Like I wasn't that connected to it yet, but as a brand new executive director is not exactly the challenge I was looking to overcome at the,
Right.
the
Yeah.
very beginning of my tenure.
Right. Yeah. And I think in the early days afterwards, so many of us were just stunned.
Mhm.
And I remember thinking, what just happened? Like I couldn't comprehend it. And it started just with my street, with my neighborhood, and seeing all the trees that were down. And and then, you couldn't drive down one road. You'd have to turn around and it was almost like
Yeah,
going through a maze.
yeah,
How can I get to Sweeten Creek Road?
right.
How many ways? It just and it just I know I was so perplexed, and we were also without water and electricity and, um, even cell service. And so no one knew anything how we were. And I
Yeah.
remember when my daughters that one lives in Charlotte and the other is in New Jersey. And when I finally was able to find some cell service to make a call, they were like, "Thank God you're okay. We've been
Mhm.
worried sick about you." And I'm like, well, trees are down. And they're like, "Mama, you don't know what happened in the area where you live." And I said, "I don't."
Yeah.
And I, like you, cried a lot. I sat on my front porch and cried, you know,
Yeah.
because it just, and I was listening to a radio, like I had one of those Red Cross emergency
Mhm.
radios that you hand crank it.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for that. That's how I was finding out what was going on in the world
Yeah. Yeah,
outside.
and that whole you were talking about like driving around and how you just keep running into roadblocks. So you're doing that and you're thinking there's not any gas.
Yes.
Like this has to be really important for me to get somewhere, and then you hit a dead end and it's like, ugh, like I just wasted how much gas to try to
Yeah.
figure out a way to get around.
Right.
And then Sunday morning I was just like, my husband wasn't back yet, and I just wanted to like be with other people. So I walked to church. So I go to First United Methodist Church in Hendersonville, and I live less than a mile away. So I was like, maybe somebody else is there. You
Yeah.
know,
Right.
somebody else is looking for connection.
Yeah.
And so I got here, and of course, there was nobody here. The doors were
Oh,
locked. I was like, what am I going to do? So I just started walking, and Carrie Ann had set up a
yes.
little distribution site that was just around the block. And so I just went and sat with her all day and just, passed stuff out to people because people were bringing stuff in. I was giving stuff out. It was a very makeshift distribution site.
It sure
Um,
was.
and the church started one up on Monday. And so my husband and I and our foster daughter all came up here and just all week long, we just had people driving through, giving them supplies. She was interpreting. Um,
Oh,
so it was really great for her to be able to serve in that way because there were a lot of Spanish speaking families coming through looking for help.
right.
Uh, and I mean, it was surreal. I was literally serving meals from World Central Kitchen out of my church parking lot. I was like, these are the people who are in Ukraine. They're in
Right.
Gaza, like,
Yeah.
and now they're in Hendersonville, North Carolina, in my church parking lot.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
just wild.
Yeah. So, talk to me or share with me about um just so you had opportunities for connection to serve and support other people. What has the road to, there's not normal. We know that, right? It's just a new normal. What what was the road to recovery like for you at home with your family and then also with literacy connection?
Yeah. So, at home, we really like to go camping. So we kind of figured out our way of life that we were kind of camping in our own house. So we were
Right?
using a camp stove to cook and do all that stuff outside. And um, it really drew it was a sweet time for our, foster daughters who were teenagers and getting ready to age out, but have nothing to do, nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Um, doing jigsaw puzzles in front of the picture window,
Yeah.
just sort of being together.
Hmm.
Um, so that was a sweet time. And then, you start hearing about people's power coming back, and you're like, well, mine's not back yet. Mine's not back yet. But the half of the church's power came back
Okay.
before ours did at home, and so I started sort of squatting here to do some work.
Yeah.
And that is ultimately how we ended up. So our office has actually now moved into First United Methodist Church.
Okay.
It's a really wonderful place to be. They've been super supportive. There's other nonprofits using the space as well. It's a giant building. And so I think just part of that immediate recovery time and me being around all the time, and them learning about the need and recognizing that they had the means to meet it,
Yeah.
was really nice. We started a fundraising campaign to rise from the flood. People came out of the woodwork to support us. We were able to raise $100,000 in 3 months, which is really
Wow.
amazing.
Yeah.
Just support from all over the place. My old landlord in Massachusetts is sending me a check, and my friend's mom in Charlotte. People who have people outside of the region who are seeing all of this destruction. We're saying, okay, who can we help that is there?
Yeah.
Uh, and then when they, see the picture of our office underwater, it's like, wow, they could probably use some help. So it's been really nice to sort of expand our network. People are learning about what we do, um, and really supporting it. So that sort of immediate few months after has been um, really encouraging
Yeah.
just to see the support that people have.
Hmm.
And our foster daughters launched. They moved out. They're doing fine. Um, but it's just such a wild time to launch from the nest right in the wake of that disaster. So
Absolutely.
well, and I told you about one of my foster daughter's boyfriends. The other one, I didn't tell you about his story. My goodness, we couldn't get in touch with him. She hadn't heard from him. She hadn't heard from him. He worked in Fletcher, and he had driven to Fletcher early Friday morning and then got stuck there, lived in Horseshoe. He
Oh,
literally walked from Fletcher to Horseshoe.
oh my goodness.
It took 2 days, and his parents had no idea, couldn't communicate. He stayed with some random people who took him in. Um, halfway between Fletcher and Horseshoe. But so when we, heard that he was okay, that he made it home, that was also a huge relief.
Mm,
Uh,
wow.
but I was just like, I can't even imagine his parents, they're 17-year-olds,
Yeah,
goes off to work and doesn't come home for 2 days
right.
in the
And
midst
have
of all
no
of this.
way of
Yeah.
communicating whatsoever
Yeah.
with limited resources,
Right.
too. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I went backwards in
No, no,
time.
no.
That was another
No, no.
another big.
That's totally fine. I mean,
Yeah.
it's we everyone. This is why I think these stories are so important because we don't really realize we know what we were going through. We know what we were doing for survival, but not really having the perspective from another person or from other people. So, I'm so happy to hear that your foster daughters have launched, that not only have they launched, but they actually were able to get things that they needed to get started in their new place. And I'm so sorry about losing the building where
Mhm.
Literacy Connection was, but so happy to hear that you have another place. And it is, not only is it supporting you, but it's supporting other nonprofits. And that's what churches are about, is about supporting the community. And I'm just so happy to hear how that all came together.
Yeah.
Um,
I've had people asking me for months and months and months, when are we going to move back into our other
um,
building?
yeah.
And now, just about a month ago, they demolished it, so it's not there. So it looked fine. I think that was really hard for people
Yeah,
to imagine it in the state that it was in because it didn't have a tree fall on it. It was
right,
just inundated by 15 feet of water.
right,
Um, and so everybody would drive by and be like, "Oh, it looks fine. When are you moving back in?" I said, "We're never moving back in." But
yeah.
now it's been completely demolished as though it was never there. So people no longer drive by and ask me when we're going to move back
But
in.
let's just talk about that for a minute. Other places that we know, that we've seen, that we've frequented, that are no longer here.
You're just gone.
How
Yeah.
about the McDonald's in Biltmore Village that is gone, that
Right.
they totally tore it down?
Hmm.
Understandably so, because of all of the water that went through the building. The Biltmore estate, right at the entrance,
Yep.
looks totally different.
Hmm.
Moe's, Osaka in Asheville,
Yep.
gone.
Gone. Yep.
What about in Hendersonville? So your building got torn down. Have there been any other buildings that you can think of that were standing that are no longer inhabitable or are no longer standing?
Yeah, I haven't driven back down the road where my foster daughter's boyfriend lived in a while, but right after the storm, it was literally every single house for like a quarter-mile stretch. Literally everything from inside the house is in giant piles outside of the house. I think the debris was really shocking just
Yeah.
to see how much stuff was just getting destroyed. He was able to go into his house where he was renting a room and get all of his clothes out, and they were just going to let him sit in a bin until he could find a new place to go. And we said,
Mm-mm.
if you want those to survive, you're going to have to wash them. So I have pictures of the two of them down on their hands and knees for an
Oh.
entire day, hand washing
Oh my
all of
goodness.
his clothes. They're strewn all about our entire, like all the way along our fence, putting up all these temporary clotheslines to be able to save
Yeah. Yeah.
all of his stuff. But I think just like the piles of debris are finally, for the most part, gone. I think back to, 20 years ago when I was in college 20 years ago. This is the 20-year anniversary week of Katrina.
Yes.
I spent all of my fall breaks and spring breaks doing hurricane recovery in Mississippi,
Wow.
from Katrina, and just thinking like I was doing that for 3 years. Like I was still mucking out houses, a year after the storm had passed.
Yeah.
And so that is still happening here. I, my husband's on the board of Historic Johnson Farm, and they said they had a group from some Lutheran group of people, relief workers came in last week and finally have cleared the rest of the trees that had fallen on that property
Oh, good.
just last week.
Yeah.
Um, and so you still hear about all these stories of,
Hmm.
People are still coming in, they're still helping. Things are reopening. When
Right.
Harris Teeter reopened,
Yes. Yeah, I heard
it was
about that.
eight months after it had closed. The fresh market is still closed. Um, so just sort of the businesses disappearing. I can't think of any right off the bat that have just been
Yeah.
completely torn down, but
Well, but
you go into the baker's box and it obviously had water on the ground, and they've cut out all the sheetrock up
yeah.
to about 18 inches where the water
Hmm.
was, and they're just
Hmm.
back to business as usual.
Yeah. Well, I think devastatingly enough, just the your building
Hmm. Yeah.
and
Oh, well, and we were right outside of Beverly Hanks Center, which is where, Hendersonville Pediatrics was, and it was under 4 or 5 feet of water. And I think, I was pretty devastated at us losing our space, but I was like, think how many children don't have their pediatrician.
yeah.
The pediatric dentist in that place was the only one in Henderson County that took Medicaid. And that's where my foster daughters went to get their teeth. My other foster daughter had an appointment to get her cavities filled on October 31st, and they're still not filled.
Oh, yeah.
They shut down altogether, the dental office. And so I think the pediatric office is like finally moving back into their space after completely renovating it.
Yeah.
But um, there's just having to make the decision. Well, fortunately, we didn't have to make the decision for ourselves. We rented the building from the city of Hendersonville, and they made the decision to tear the building down.
Yeah.
Um, but I just think about all the people that had to decide, like, okay, do we tear it down or do we rebuild?
Right. Yeah. It's interesting too, even as we're coming upon the 1 year anniversary, people from outside the area that maybe had heard about what happened think, oh, are things are back to normal now? And
No,
no,
no.
it's not.
So I will say I went to a conference in Arizona in June, and it was a small group. It was less than 100 people. They told us our goal was to have a conversation with every other person who was there.
Okay.
And I kid you not, every single person that I met, they asked me who I was, where I was from, and their first question was like, how did you fare from the hurricane? And I was like, can I just get up on the mic and tell everyone the story? Because having to say it 100 times,
Yes.
it was really heartening to know that people still knew and people
Yeah.
still cared and they hadn't forgotten. But
Right.
it was just like, how many more times
Yes.
do I have to say this same
Yes.
thing
Yeah.
to yet another stranger?
Yes. Yeah. I think for me too, I had to just let my family know ahead of time. There's not really a whole lot that you can do or say that's going to cheer me up.
Yeah.
I'm not okay,
Right.
and it's okay,
Yeah.
but I sure do want to be around you,
Hmm.
and but don't expect that you're going to cheer me up because I'm raw.
Yeah. We are
I'm,
not okay. None of
yeah,
us are okay. And
yeah,
it was awkward even just like writing emails in those, especially in the first month or two. And it's like, you're used to writing these pleasantries at the beginning of emails, like, oh, hope you're doing well. And it's like, oh, I can't even say that because I know people are not doing well.
right. Yeah.
And so it's like, what can I say?
Yes. Yeah. So I want to ask you, how has this experience changed the way you see yourself?
That's a great question. I think about it professionally. Um, like if I can do this, I can do anything.
Mm,
You know, if I
mm-hmm.
could weather this storm and get this organization to the successful place that it is in today with all of those barriers in the way, like I can do it,
Yeah.
And so I feel like I definitely developed a pretty significant confidence in just my own ability to overcome and to lead other people through difficult times
Yeah.
in a professional way.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of, I lived in the developing world for in my early 20s, and I would say that really had already changed me and sort of primed me for these sorts of situations where it's like you know, I had to be resourceful because we didn't have everything we needed. And
Yes.
so it was like, okay, yeah, I know what to do when I don't have everything I need. Like
Right.
I know plenty of people that don't have everything that they need and they're all doing just fine.
Right.
So I think it just sort of reconfirmed that, it's been a long time since that's how I was living, but
Mm-hmm.
it shows you what matters and what doesn't really, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you could give some advice to someone who's going through a disaster now, what would you want them to know?
That grief is a long journey. It's it is unexpected, the ways that it pops up, and it's okay to not be okay.
Mm.
Um, and nobody needs to pretend like they're okay when everything is not okay.
Yeah.
I think it's important just to have people you can count on just in general, like and be the person that other people can count on.
Mm.
So just maintaining the relationships that you have so that when you're in need, there are people that you can reach out to.
Yeah.
Or when you see people in need, there are people that you can reach out to help.
Hmm.
When
Yeah.
I
I
grew up,
like
there was a
that.
whole slogan growing up in my house and community that a need seen is an assignment given. And
Mm, I
we
like
all see
that.
different needs, and so we all have different assignments, but just to be on the lookout for your own needs, and then just the needs of the people that you can meet, and that you can't meet everybody's needs.
Right.
Um, the needs are far greater than we have the capacity to support.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you can just, one little tiny thing, um,
Mhm.
can make a huge difference for someone.
Yeah, and I think we've seen stories of that in our communities where we live, where there's been a need and a blossoming network of support, of ministry, of new nonprofits, even just growing because the need is so great.
Hmm.
And so, and the other thing I was thinking about with your foster daughters, you, Kelly, you taught them how to survive through a difficult circumstance. Maybe they had, I don't know, and you don't have to share about their backgrounds, but if they're in the foster care system, something happened for them to be in foster care, but you actually taught them how to go through a natural disaster.
Hmm.
Have you ever thought about that?
I mean, they've taught me so much, that so one of them is from Guatemala, one of them is from Mexico, and so being in a completely like they had experienced difficult times in their countries of origin,
Yeah.
and difficult times here, but this was just like a totally different one. But just to see their resilience already,
Mm,
and the ways that they had grown in time, and then so that just showed me like they had the strength to be able, like if all of the other things that they had overcome in life, this is just one more blip on the radar
yeah.
for them. And like it sounds terrible to be like, oh, well, now we have this shared difficult thing that we've gone through that like really draws you even closer together because you don't want to wish terrible things on anybody.
Sure.
But it does make it so much like such a stronger connection to have experienced something hard together,
Yes.
instead of just knowing about the hard things that they had overcome
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for giving giving me some time for us to have this conversation. It is emotional, especially looking back over things, but I'm so grateful for your time and your open heart and sharing. So, if people wanted to get in touch with you or maybe even donate financially to the Literacy Connection, how could they do that?
Sure. Yeah. Our website is litconnection.org, Lit connection.org.
Hmm.
There is a donate button there. I'm happy to share more of our story, other ways that people can get involved. We're always looking for volunteer tutors who can
Okay.
support our students. And so we have volunteer orientations the first Monday of every month here at First United Methodist Church in Hendersonville.
Hmm.
Uh,
Do
and yeah,
people
we can always use financial support. They can
like
give online or write a check.
okay, that and so I'm hoping that this will open some doors for that as well. Just from a volunteer perspective, do people come from other areas in Western North Carolina, your volunteer base? Do you have to live in Hendersonville to volunteer?
So we serve the the students that we serve are all Henderson County residents, and our tutors and students meet wherever is most convenient for them.
Okay.
So if we have some that live, we have folks that meet in Fletcher, and we have folks that meet in Etowah, and sort of all around. That we do provide only in-person, one-on-one setting. So
Okay.
it's just a
Okay.
matter of how far are you willing to travel, and where
Okay.
does your student live?
Good. Well, I think that's important to know as well. If folks don't live in Hendersonville, could they still participate? So, is there an
And there are literacy councils across the state and the country. So I
Sure.
recommend if it is something that you're interested in and passionate about to find the one in your area. Like there, Literacy Together in Asheville, Buncombe, provides a lot of similar services and a lot of great ways to connect with adult learners
Hmm.
as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Kelly. I look forward to seeing you soon in the future. We spend some time together with some networking groups that we're a part of. Again, thank you so much for your time. It really was encouraging to hear your story today.
Thank you so much for giving me the chance to share it.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate you.
Thank you.